Hey, college football fans, welcome back to the channel. The college football playoff kicked off with a bang on Friday night. And while there was plenty of drama, there's one thing that has already caused a lot of controversy: Indiana being in the playoff in the first place. We all saw Notre Dame blow out Indiana 27-17. But let's be real, the game wasn't nearly as close as the final score suggests. Notre Dame was dominating, leading 27-3 before Indiana scored a couple of late touchdowns to make the game look more respectable. But ESPN's Kirk Herbstreit didn't hold back on Saturday morning's College Game Day when discussing Indiana's inclusion in the playoff. So, was Indiana really one of the best 12 teams in the country? Or were they just a product of a weak schedule? Let's dive in. Herbstreit's bold statement: Indiana didn't belong. It's not every day you hear an analyst like Kirk Herbstreit go all in like this. But during College Game Day, he was blunt. Indiana shouldn't have been on that field against Notre Dame. He didn't mince words either, saying, "It's no knock on Indiana. They had a great year. But we've got to move forward with the playoff and hope that the committee does a better job of weighing who the best 12 are versus who's the most deserving." Indiana was outclassed in that game. Harsh words, right? Herbstreit was quick to point out that Indiana had an impressive 11-1 record. But they didn't have the quality wins to back up that success. In his eyes, Indiana's spot in the playoffs was a result of their record rather than their overall strength as a team. But did Indiana deserve to be in the playoff? Well, that's a debate. Indiana's schedule, more than just wins. Sure, it's easy to criticize Indiana's schedule. But let's not forget, they didn't exactly have a cakewalk. Yes, their biggest test came in a 28-15 loss to Ohio State. But Indiana also went up against teams like Michigan and Washington, both of whom had just come off a national championship appearance the previous year. Were those teams weaker this year? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean Indiana should be punished for beating them, right? Here's where the argument gets tricky. Indiana's only loss came to a top 10 team in Ohio State, and they beat two teams that had played in last year's national title game. Their record is certainly impressive, even if their schedule wasn't stacked with heavyweights. Does that deserve a playoff berth? The case against other teams. Let's also consider the alternatives. Miami was a 10-2 team, but they blew a 21-point lead to Syracuse in the final week of the season, finishing with a defense that wasn't exactly championship caliber. Meanwhile, Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina all had 3 losses. Alabama and Ole Miss both suffered losses to teams with subpar records, like a 6-6 Oklahoma or a 4-8 Kentucky. So while Indiana wasn't the most exciting team in the field, it's hard to argue they didn't deserve to be there when you look at the competition. The Hoosiers' 11-1 record in a Power 5 conference was enough to get them in. On the other hand, the 3 loss teams didn't have enough to justify a spot, especially with losses like that. The fallout from Indiana's inclusion. Here's the thing. While Indiana's inclusion in the playoff might not have been universally popular, if they were left out, it would have created a massive backlash. You can bet that fans, pundits, and even coaches would have been up in arms about Indiana's exclusion after a remarkable 11-1 season. That's exactly what happened after the playoff field was set in December. If Indiana hadn't made it, it would have sparked calls for playoff expansion and an overall rethink of the selection process. So while they may not have been the best team, they were certainly one of the most deserving, based on their record and performance in a Power 5 conference. What's next for Indiana? Well, the Hoosiers' season might have ended in a blowout loss to Notre Dame. But Indiana can still hold their heads high after a historic 11-1 season. They may have been outclassed on the field against the Fighting Irish, but making the playoff was a huge accomplishment for a program that has been historically under the radar. Final thoughts: deserving versus best. So, where do we stand? Was Indiana one of the best teams in the country? Probably not, but were they deserving of a spot in the playoff? Absolutely. The playoff isn't just about who has the best players or the most star power. It's about rewarding teams that have had a remarkable season. And Indiana did just that. But as Kirk Herbstreit pointed out, maybe the committee needs to do a better job of figuring out which teams truly have the potential to compete for a national title, not just the ones with the best records. That's all for today's breakdown. What do you think? Was Indiana outclassed, or were they just a victim of a tough matchup against Notre Dame? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your fellow college football fans. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a video from us. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hey there, football fans. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're ready to dive into the wild world of college football. Because today we've got some spicy takes, jaw-dropping results, and, of course, a little bit of fun along the way. So grab your snacks, settle in, and let's talk about the 2024 College Football Playoff, a topic that's as hot as your grandma's chili on a summer day. You know, the kind that leaves you both impressed and questioning your life choices afterward. But before we get into it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a big ol' thumbs up. Share it with your friends, especially those who claim they know more about football than you. Trust me, they'll be eating their words after this one. Alright, enough chit-chat, let's get into the action. Indiana's playoff debut, a hard lesson in college football reality. Okay, first off, let's talk about Indiana, the team that made it into the 2024 College Football Playoff and instantly became the underdog in everyone's eyes. Seriously, 11-1 record? They might as well have been a miracle team that no one saw coming. Some of you might have heard of them because, honestly, they're not a household name like Alabama or Ohio State. But Indiana Hoosiers had some serious bragging rights heading into the playoffs. Let's break it down. Indiana had a strong regular season with an 11-1 record. Their only loss was to Ohio State, a top-tier team. No shame there. They were cruising, taking down teams like Michigan and Washington, two heavyweights from last year's national championship scene. All eyes were on them, and the hype was real. But then, reality hit hard. They found themselves facing Notre Dame in the first round of the playoffs. And well, let's just say it didn't go as planned. Notre Dame showed them that the college football playoff is a whole different ballgame. Now, here comes the fun part. Kirk Herbstreit, an ESPN analyst and all-around football guru, got some attention for his take after the game. He said, Indiana was outclassed in that game, adding that they didn't belong on the field with Notre Dame. Harsh? Yeah, but is it accurate? Not so fast. Kirk, sure, Indiana got whooped, but that doesn't automatically mean they didn't belong there. But guess what? Hindsight is always 20/20. And it's easy to be critical when the scoreline looks one-sided. I'm sure if Indiana had won, Herbstreit would have been singing a different tune. You can't judge a team purely based on how they perform in one playoff game. After all, Indiana worked their tails off all season to earn their spot. And just because they didn't pull a miracle doesn't mean they shouldn't have been there in the first place. The SEC, big boys, and the Indiana debate. Let's take a moment to talk about the real conversation here. Who should have made it instead of Indiana? Here's where things get juicy. Some folks were out there suggesting that teams like Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina should have been in the playoffs instead of Indiana. Really? I get it. The SEC always has a flair for drama and flashy plays. But 3 losses is not a good look, especially when those losses include a 6-6 Oklahoma and a 4-8 Kentucky. Come on. If you can't beat a team that finishes with a losing record, can you really be considered a contender? The Hoosiers, on the other hand, didn't just sneak in with a few easy wins. They went 11-1 in a Power 5 conference. And yeah, maybe their schedule wasn't killer, but they did what they needed to do. And here's the kicker. What if those other teams, like Ole Miss, had done better and avoided those embarrassing losses? It's all about consistency and execution, not just flashy plays or big names. This year, Indiana earned their spot by handling business throughout the regular season, and they had every right to be in the playoffs. Indiana's performance versus Notre Dame, a cautionary tale. Now let's get real for a second. Indiana didn't perform well against Notre Dame, and we can't sugarcoat that. 27-17 might seem close, but when you watch the game, it was clear that Notre Dame dominated most of the match. Indiana didn't seem to have any answers for Notre Dame's defense, and their offense couldn't keep up. But hey, that's football for you. Sometimes, the ball doesn't bounce your way. A lot of fans are out there saying, "See, told you they didn't belong." Well, that's a bit harsh. Indiana didn't get the result they wanted. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't have had the opportunity to try. And for all the talk about how Indiana wasn't ready, let's not forget that the college football playoff should be about rewarding teams for their entire body of work. A team that finishes 11-1 in a Power 5 conference has earned the right to be there. Period. They deserve a shot, no matter what happens on the big stage. The reality of college football playoff selection. At the end of the day, this whole debate about who deserves to be in the playoffs isn't just about who's the best team. It's about who earned their place through the grind of the regular season. Indiana had a great season, and no one should take that away from them. Whether they performed well in the playoffs or not doesn't change the fact that they earned their spot. And they gave it their best shot when it counted. Sure, it was a tough lesson for Indiana, but it's also a reminder of how competitive college football can be. Just because a team deserves to be there doesn't mean they'll always get the outcome they expect. That's the beauty of the sport. You never know what will happen until you step onto the field. So, what do you think? Was Indiana's playoff spot justified? Or should the committee have selected someone else? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And before you leave, don't forget to like this video if you agree that Indiana earned their shot. And subscribe for more deep dives into all things college football. Share this with your friends who love the game as much as you do. You know they'll want to hear your take on this hot topic. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Keep the football spirit alive. And as always, stay awesome.